ask you something? This past break was meant to include revision, right? Did it? The reason why I ask is because I work with a lot of families, and around this point, this is when I hear two different types of stories. Either, yeah, it happened, said with a sense of helpless exhaustion, or it didn't really happen, said quietly with shame attached to it. And what I want to say to both of these parents, what I want to say to you is that whatever happened this break is not a failure. And just like everything that we do, we need to adjust based off of today. That is exactly what this episode is all about. And just so you know who this is for, it's for parents that are preparing for GCSEs, the 11 plus, entrance exams, SATs in May. It doesn't really matter which exam your child is preparing for because they all take their toll, especially in this break. So today we're diving into how we can make it a little bit more manageable and productive, even if we're looking at the last 3 days. Why this matters. Here's something that I've realized across every single family that I've worked with, and if I'm honest, within my own life too. The school holidays that sit right before the exams. Those ones feel a little bit different, don't they? We're not talking the 1 week half term at the beginning of autumn. That one feels good because we're like, yes, the first 6 weeks of school are done. Let's take a rest before the year end. No, we're talking about these 2 week holidays, potentially 3 week holidays leading up to SATs, leading up to GCSEs, leading up to the 5-month countdown for the 11 plus exams. These weeks, these feel a little bit different. And they feel different because the exams are not Monday when they go back. They're far enough where they feel far away, but they're close enough that if we don't use this time effectively, you can get to the end of the exams and actively go, oh, I wish I would have done that specific break differently, because it makes a difference what we do now. That's why you're either feeling stressed and overwhelmed because they've done nothing, or they've been at it so intensely that you're worried that they might be going back to school burnt out. And for a neurotypical brain, that distance that seems arbitrarily far but is actually quite close, it can feel uncomfortable. But for a neurodivergent brain or an anxious brain, that gap of time that we're dealing with right now, that can feel paralyzing. And it's because it feels heavy. No matter what brain we're working with, it's why I feel like it's important to understand what's going on right now. Maybe you've said this once this break. Maybe you've said it 100 times, but sit down and revise sounds like you're giving one instruction, right? Maybe two. Sit and revise. But revision has so many different factors to it. It's not just about sitting down. We need to decide, what are we revising? When do we revise? What specific topic are we looking to revise? How do we revise? For how long do we revise? That was a question that I got the other day. Do I sit and revise for 30 minutes every day? And my answer was, well, no, it depends on the consistency more than the time. There's so many factors that go into revise. And this is why our brains either go into hyperdrive of going all in, get it done, and leading potentially to burnout, or the other end of the scale of being dysregulated is to freeze, to go blank, to avoid and not do, because where on earth do you start? And I say this because I don't want you to go into this next part of this episode holding on to any guilt. It doesn't matter what's happened in the last couple of days, last couple of weeks. What matters now is how we prepare for the transition between holiday mode and we're getting ready for exams that are around the corner mode. And what I want to give you right now is something that we can do practically in the next couple of days to get this right for your child. Make sure you grab your pen and your paper, grab your drink. This one is going to go quick. Let's dive into the 3-day framework. Okay, you know I love to paint a picture, so I'm going to do that now, so that way there you can decide which scenario you fit into. I've kind of touched on both of them, but I'm going to add a third one because, to be honest, that is where most of our families are right now. Picture number 1, burnout is just around the corner. If your child continues at the level of which they are revising and dedicating their time, effort, and energy to the revision, burnout is around the corner. And I say this with care because I've seen it too many times not to name it. This is the teen that did revise, but it was tense, perhaps tearful. And honestly, it felt like it sucked the life out of that holiday or that term time break. These children, they've worked themselves to the point of exhaustion because they wanted to cram in as much as they could and use this time as effectively as they could to ensure that they would get the best results. Now, let's be careful because there's a balance, a really fine balance. There's working intentionally to get the best results, and then there's working past the point where you're working now in a dysregulated state because you're doing it out of fear and anxiety, and that working memory will not hold on to as much as if you were in a regulated state. Regulated states mean that you need to take sufficient breaks. You need to have a balance between what you're revising and your normal day-to-day life. And so if your child's in this picture, this scenario 1, we need to handle the next couple of days very differently than the child who is in scenario number 2. Revision did not happen. Everything else but revision happened. They may even have a very tidy room because they tried so hard to avoid any kind of actively sitting down and engaging with schoolwork. And there's a couple reasons why that might happen. 1, we're dealing with a lot of springtime vibes right now, so that sun is going in and out behind the clouds. Apologies. They did not revise because, like I said, revision is such a big task. Where do we start? They went through analysis paralysis. They weren't able to start. They genuinely got stuck on the thought of exams, and that anxiety weighed them down so much, it stopped their ability of thinking rationally, making a plan, taking initiative, and getting things done. And therefore, we did nothing in revision time. And right now you might be dealing with the aftermath of that. The guilt, the shame, the frustration, the anxiety, the embarrassment. There's a lot going on in that teen that might seem disconnected, quiet, and like they really just don't care. And as I mentioned, we have a third scenario, and this is the scenario that many of our families talk to us about. They've done revision, but it was quite tearful and didn't really seem to add anything. There was a lot of avoidance, and getting them to that table potentially was a battle. So it created this really uncomfortable, vicious cycle for everyone in the family because no one wanted to say you needed to revise because it created the battle. But then they did do a little bit of revision, but every time you then said it again, it created the battle, and then it was heavy on the whole family during this time that you should be having together. So what do? Well, we have the 3-day framework, and the 3-day framework works a little bit differently depending if you are scenario 1, scenario 2, or scenario 3, the middle one. So let's go through them one by one. And I'm going to put the timestamp so that way there you can jump to the one that you might feel like suits your family the best. So scenario 1, the child that revised, but potentially to the point of exhaustion and burnout. Your 3-day framework is a little bit different. Now see, the difference for your child specifically is that recovery is the best thing that we can do for them right now, not more revision. Here's the thing about an exhausted brain. There's a researcher that I love that wrote a book called Why We Sleep. And within that book, he explains, well, why we sleep. And the main reason is because in rest and recovery, that is when our brain is able to consolidate everything, store things from short-term memory into long-term memory. It's how we rebuild all of our cells and regenerate so we feel good and confident and full of energy. But if we're talking about revision specifically, rest and recovery is how your child is going to be able to retrieve all of the information that they sacrifice their break to learn in the exams that are coming up. So the best way that we can honor all of that hard work that they've done is to focus on rest and recovery. And it needs to start now. And this is coming from a self-identified person who believed that pushing through and resilience and grit were the epitome of strong character and what was needed for success. That has led to burnout, and it only sets you back further. Whether I was preparing for a marathon and overran, or I was getting a business started and overworked. Neither scenario worked, even though it aligned with what I believed and what society believes is the best way forward. Overdoing something is overdoing something. It doesn't give us better results. The best thing we need to do now for your child that has done so much revision is give them a dedicated time slot to rest, recharge, recover, and restabilize before they go back into term time. So for that burnt out family, day 1 is rest and recovery. Guilt-free. No revision. And I appreciate that the reason why they might have been doing all of this revision is because they're doing it from an anxious state. So going cold turkey may feel really overwhelming. So, okay, if they want to do a little bit of blurting out loud, talking to you at the dinner table, what they remember, that's okay. But no flashcards. No sitting at the desk. No watching videos and making notes or none of that. We need to rest. We need to recover. And they need to hear that from you now so they don't experience burnout in their future. Day 2, this can be a low stakes retrieval practice. So 30 minutes max, they sit down and they might want to mind map something out that they've been thinking about to see what they remember and what they might have been like worried that they had forgotten, and to fill that gap in so they get that dopamine, that connection loop closed before we go into day 3. Day 3, we are prepping for transition. We get good sleep, good food, go outside, call your friends, do something that is kid-like. Prepare your body for the transition that is going back into term time mode. So day 1, official rest and recovery. Don't do anything. Day 2, you can use that day to close the loops that I'm sure were opened in day 1 when your brain was going through all of the things it knows and doesn't know. Close those loops, max 30 minutes, then you move on. Day 3, we are preparing for a shift from holiday mode to term time mode. So no revision. You get the bag ready, you get school lunch ready, you pack your clothes, all of the stuff. Join me right now because I'm heading into scenario 2, the child that has avoided our revision like it is baggy jeans in 2026. Okay, scenario 2. This is for the teen that absolutely avoided any kind of revision and potentially has a sparkling clean room. First, we need to note that the next 3 days are not going to be revision sprints. We need to let that idea go. Let the belief of going hard in 3 days is going to make a big difference. It's not. Instead, what will happen is we will trigger shame and frustration and overwhelm and anxiety in your child and then send them off back to school feeling all of those things. And honestly, that might be the worst thing that we can do. We don't want to do that. So instead, here is what your day 1 will actually look like. So you're going to sit down with your teen, not in a confrontational way, just sit down with them, and you're going to go through all of the subjects that they need to prepare for, and in each subject, those topics that they need to prepare for. And you're going to help them map out where they are. A lot of schools use RAG to self-assess where you think you are. So red, you have no idea what's going on. Amber, you're good, but you know you need revision. And green means that you're good to go. So you're going to go through every single subject and topic, and your child is going to self-assess using RAG to determine where they are. Now, the important thing here is that we are not grading them. We're not trying to determine if they're really good at something. All we're trying to do is get a lay of the land, because sometimes the reason why revision was avoided so hard is because they have a belief that they are all red. So why bother trying if they know they've got nothing going on for them? And oftentimes that's not quite the truth. Or they believe they're all green. So what's the point of revising if I've got it in the bag? Going through this mapping out self-assessment does a little bit of work for us. It holds us accountable to what we actually do know, which helps build confidence, but it also helps our overly confident individuals understand that there are some gaps and that it would serve them well to do a little bit of revision. Now, if your child has ADHD or they're an anxious learner, this mapping out where they are is incredibly important. It's actually what we do in all of our tutoring sessions. So instead of looking at math as an entire topic and being like, how confident are you about math? And our anxious learners go, ooh, well, if I say I'm green, that means I have to be green in absolutely everything, and I'm not green in absolutely everything, but I don't know what I'm red in. Maybe there's more red than there is green, and so maybe I should just say red, and then I'm horrible at maths. And that's what you hear. But that's not a very clear picture. So what we do is we break it down into specific topics. So I know as a parent, you don't have all of the ins and outs of being able to identify the missing piece behind that specific topic that your child might need to revise. But your child has a pretty good sense of what they need to look at based on their past experience. You can go through their notebook with them. You can pull up a specific topic or question. So if you're doing the SATs exam, you can type into Google past SAT papers looking at adding fractions, and so many will pop up. And then you ask your child, can you do this one independently? If they can, green. If they cannot, it's red. Today we're just mapping it out. Okay, so day one, we're mapping it out for the child who did no revision at all. Day two, we are picking one specific subject, and within that subject, one specific topic. Ideally, we're moving towards a topic that has the exam nearest to us. That makes the most sense. Or it's the topic that we know we can boost the confidence the quickest. It's not always about going into the red area. Sometimes it's about going through the amber areas first, because that builds the confidence, which builds momentum, which allows us the resilience of going towards those red sections. So we choose one topic and one time slot. You sit down and you go through active revision. Now, our previous video went through everything you need to know to support an ADHD learner in revision. It talks specifically about time blocks and active recall methods. So if your child is ADHD, ASD, has any neurodiversity, or is an anxious learner, I definitely recommend going to this video because it's going to help you today set up what that day two will look like for your child. If your child is neurotypical and you're still wondering, well, what does that look like? There is a video, episode 6, and it talks about memory as well as the different strategies that we can use in order to support students in their active revision. For both camps, we're talking about a specific time, active recall, and long-term spaced repetition. But our times spent and what we do in our breaks differ a little bit based on the brains that we're working with. So that is day 2. Day 3, and perhaps your child's favorite day in this 3-day framework, is to stop it. Just stop revision entirely. I know it sounds counterintuitive because we're acknowledging that this is scenario 2, the child who did no revision, and you might feel your own sense of anxiety building. But I promise the best thing that we can do in day 3 is nothing revision-wise. So pack the bag, get the lunch ready, make sure all of the clothes is laid out and they know where things are. Help them to remember that they're going back to school, which means a different wake-up time, a different bedtime, all of those normal conversations that we have when we're doing a transition. If you were half listening because the scenario didn't quite fit your family, that is more than okay, but come back because now I'm talking about scenario 3, the family that's in the middle. Ow, I was sitting on a spring, I think. That really hurt my foot. That sucks. Okay, now we're talking about our middle group, our group that had revision, but it was very likely tearful and a battle, and it created a lot of avoidance. That middle group. If that is you, this is what your 3-day framework looks like. We're basically going to meld both of the options together. Day 1, we are going to do a triage, an active mapping out of exactly where they stand in all of their lessons. You're going to reg it, which means that you're going to get your child to assess themselves whether they are red, they don't understand, an amber, they could do the question, but they needed a little bit of help, or a green, they've got it. That's going to give you such a clear image of where we are and how we need to move forward. So if your child is in the camp where they've done a little bit of revision, but it created chaos in the home and a lot of avoidance happened, then we need to get an idea of where we are so that on day 2, we can do one revision session that is our strongest amber. The amber that we know we are so close to getting, that is the one that we need to spend our active revision time in. It's just the one time block. We're doing it on an amber because it will help to build the confidence. And your child right now is lacking in confidence. That's why everything has been chaotic and like a battle. We are looking to boost their confidence so we can build that momentum. That leaves us into day 3, which, like everybody else, is the rest and prepare day. Like, the thing is, we're not trying to fix what happened or didn't happen over these breaks. It's done. We can't go back anymore. And that sounds harsh, but it's the truth. So the best thing we can do is use these next couple of days that we have to set ourselves up for that transition back into term time, so that when we are in exam season, which is around the corner, your child is coming from a place of regulation, not discombobulation. I know this might sound like, oh yeah, obviously, Sarah Lynn, but I think a lot of people miss this. Like, we have this view of Easter, half term, or spring break as being this end point where if we revise all the time, then we know we will get great results later. Or if you don't revise during this time, you'll do horrible later. We can't have this black and white thinking. It just creates anxiety. Like, we need to acknowledge that this is a checkpoint. It's not a finish line. We still have weeks leading up to the exams. Sure, how we handle this break is going to make things a little bit easier or a little bit more challenging, but it doesn't mean that it's a stop point. What will create a stopping point is how we handle these 3 days, and if we push our child to the point of developing feelings that alienates them more from their work, their revision, their goals, their ability to approach learning with a growth mindset. We don't want to do that. So if you're sitting there and you're thinking, oh, okay, I feel seen, like, yeah, I'm definitely in scenario A or B or the middle group. And you're now thinking, but Sarah Lynn, how do I talk to my child about actively stopping revision? Or how do I talk to my child about starting revision with only 3 days left of the break? Or how do I tell my child that we know is going to have a meltdown if I mention revision, but we'll do it begrudgingly? How do I approach that? I've got some conversation starters that have worked with most of our families or have been fed back to us as helpful conversation starters from our families. So here we go. But before I give you the script, let me very quickly name the things that are not going to work. And we know this because they've been tested in the wild with the teens, and they don't like it. Mistake number 1, we compare last Easter's revision with their sibling to this year's Easter revision with this child. Comparison is, what do they say? Comparison is the thief of joy. It also creates a shame spiral. And Dr. Brené Brown tells us that that can actively turn off the prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking, logical part of the brain, and it's no good. So step away from the comparison. Mistake number 2, exams are only X days away. Your child knows this, and if they're anxious or have an ADHD brain, that is just going to signal their amygdala, their guard dog, to go into fight, flight, freeze mode. They're already heightened. They don't need a countdown now. And mistake number 3 is to frame the next 3 days as the sprint. You know, those last couple of days that they're going to jam in as much as they can, squeeze every ounce of this break, make sure it counts. Any of that language is toxic. We don't need that here. We're all about balance as much as possible, but more importantly, regulated nervous system. So that's why we're stepping away from that all or nothing thinking and leaning towards our 3-day reframe. I love a good script. So here's the one that I think you could use with your child either today or tomorrow. Hey, I know that Easter didn't go exactly how either of us maybe planned, and I just want to say that's okay. It happens. Here's what I want to do for the next few days. I want to help you go back to school feeling ready, not perfect, not stressed or overwhelmed, just ready. I'd really love it if we spent like 20 minutes today figuring out where you feel okay and where you'd like a little bit of support. When we know what we're dealing with, that's where we can start making really impactful changes, and that's what I would love to do for us over the next couple of days. What do you think? It's not a lecture, it's not a recap of they went too far or not far enough. It's simply just a meeting point, a grounding space. Let's just get all of the facts and prepare for the transition together. Now, the thing I'm most excited to talk to you about, if what you need isn't just a 3-day reset process, but a full structured approach to how to support your child and their specific brain in going through the entire exam period from now until results day. That is something I'm building. The exam season survival toolkit, it launches in May, and it covers exactly this. Weekly breakdowns with planners, subject mapping, and topic prioritization frameworks to help you know what to revise and when. Scripts for the hard conversations, because this season is difficult. Let's just name it as it is. And sometimes we need a little bit of inspiration on how to handle these big feelings. And my favorite part, regulation tools to help your child stay within their zone of regulation, because a brain that is regulated is going to absorb more, learn more, retain more, consolidate more, want to do more. This is a done for you process of everything that you would get if you and I were sitting side by side having a cup of tea and going through this with your child in a coaching session. So if your family is preparing for a GCSE season, SATs that are starting next year, the 11 plus that's in 5 months, or an independent school exam, this has been made with love for you. I'm going to put the waitlist in the show notes below. It's free to join and you will get early access to the launch price. For now, we still have all of our free guides, so you can get those links down below as well. If this helped, share it in your parent WhatsApp group. I know that this reset is exactly what you need to hear right now because it's exactly what the parents we work with have been telling us they needed as well. So share it, be the friend that did the good thing this week. And if you want to know exactly what to do once school starts again, the episode on ADHD revision, which is episode 22, is likely your natural next step. So I'm going to link it here so you can go ahead and watch it next. Take a breath, friends. I know it's been a lot. You are doing amazing, and I will see you in 2 weeks' time. Hey, curl, buddy. Why aren't you curling? And mistake number 3, after listening to the beginning of this podcast, you may have initially framed the next 3 days as this big change that's going to rule the world of their revision success.